今天是2022年4月5号，是清明节。那么俄罗斯呢，在乌克兰犯下了滔天罪行，在乌克兰的某一个城市，大家知道，在一个俄罗斯侵占的地方，已经发生了万人坑。那么现在呢，联合国高度重视。此时此刻，现在我们在看到一个 live streaming， 是联合视频，大家可以看到这个联合国视频正在进行，与乌克兰总统泽连斯基呢正在连线进行一个直播。那么我们可以大家看看这个新闻啊，现在此时此刻正在开始。特别希望大家呢，注意，凡是在这个视频上有人说是假新闻的，那么他一定是间谍以这个来定罪因为它是干扰的力量。现在我们看到是一个 live streaming， 你现在看到的是真相，100%是真相。好，大家看到。
You have the floor, sir.
Limbs cut, their throats, slashed their throats. Women were raped and killed in front of their children. Their tongues were pulled out only because the aggressor did not hear what they wanted to hear from them. So this is no different from other terrorists such as Daesh, who occupied some territories. And here it is done by a member of the United Nations Security Council, destroying internal unity, borders, countries, and taken the right of more than a dozen of countries who are self-determined and independent. They pursue a consistent policy of destroying ethnic and religious diversity, then inflame wars and deliberately lead them in such a way that to kill as many regular civilians and cities, to leave the country where they deploy their troops in ruins and filled with mass graves. You all see that. And they support hatred at the level of the state and seek to export it to other countries through their system of propaganda and political corruption. They provoke a global food crisis that could lead to famine in Africa, Asia, and other countries, and will surely end in large-scale political chaos in many countries, destroying their domestic security. So where is the security that the Security Council needs to guarantee? It's not there, although there is a Security Council. So where is the peace? Where are those guarantees that the United Nations needs to guarantee? It is obvious that the key institution of the world, which must ensure the coercion of any aggressor to peace, simply cannot work effectively. Now the world can see that what Russian military did in Bucha while keeping the city under their occupation, but the world has yet to see what they have done in other occupied cities and regions of our country. Geography might be different or various, but cruelty is the same, crimes are the same, and accountability must be inevitable. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to remind you of Article 1, Chapter 1 of the UN Charter. What is the purpose of our organization? Its purpose is to maintain peace and make sure that peace is adhered to. And now the UN Charter is violated literally, starting with the Article 1. And if so, what is the point of all other articles? Today, as a result of Russia's actions in our country, in Ukraine, the most terrible war crimes of all times we see since the end of World War II, and they are being committed. Russian troops are deliberately destroying Ukrainian cities to ashes with artillery and airstrike. They are deliberately blocking city, creating mass starvation. They deliberately shoot columns of civilians on the road trying to escape from the territory of hostilities. They even deliberately blow up shelters where civilians hide from airstrikes. They are deliberately creating conditions in the temporarily occupied territories so that as many civilians as possible are killed there. The massacre in our city of Bucha is only one, unfortunately, only one of many examples of what the occupiers have been doing on our land for the past 41 days. And there are many more cities, similar places where the world has yet to learn the full truth. Mariupol, Kharkiv, Chernobyl, Tyrka, Borodyanka, and dozens other Ukrainian communities. Each of them is similar to Bucha. I know, and you know perfectly well, what the representatives of Russia will say in response to the accusations of these crimes. They have said that many times. The most significant was after the shooting down of the Malaysian Boeing over Donbas by Russian forces with Russian weapons, or during the war in Syria. They will blame everyone just to justify their own actions. They will say that there are various versions, different versions, and it is impossible to establish which one of those versions is true. They will even say that the bodies were of those kills were allegedly thrown away, and all videos are staged. But it is 2022 now. We have conclusive evidence. So there are satellite images. And we can conduct full and transparent investigation. That is what we are interested in. Maximum access for journalists, maximum cooperation with international institutions, involvement of the International Criminal Court, complete truth and full accountability. I'm sure that every member state of the UN should be interested in this. For what? In order to punish once and for all those who consider themselves privileged and believe that they can get away with anything. So show all the other potential war criminals in the world how they will be punished. If the biggest one is punished, then everyone is punished. Why did Ukraine come to Ukraine? I will tell you, because Russia's leadership feels like colonizers. In ancient times, they need our wealth, our people. Russia has already deported hundreds of thousands of our citizens to their country. They're stealing everything, starting with food, ending with gold earrings that are pulled out and covered with blood. We are dealing with a state that is turning the veto into the UN Security Council into the right to die. This undermines the whole architecture of global security. It allows them to go unpunished. So they are destroying everything that they can. So if this continues, the countries will rely only on the power of their own arms to ensure their security, and not on international law, not rely on international institutions. The United Nations can be simply closed. Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready to close the UN? Do you think that the time of international law is gone? If your answer is no, then you need to act immediately. The UN charter must be restored immediately. The UN system must be reformed immediately so that the veto is not the right to die, that there is a fair representation in the Security Council of all regions of the world. The aggressor must be brought to peace immediately. Determination is needed. The massacre from Syria to Somalia, from Afghanistan to Yemen and Libya, that should have been stopped long time ago, to tell you the truth. If tyranny had at least once received such a response to the war it had waged, it would have cease to exist and honest peace had been guaranteed after it, and the world would have changed for sure. And then perhaps there would not be war in my country against our people, against Ukrainian people, against our citizens. But the world watched and did not want to see either the occupation of Crimea or the war against Georgia or taking the entire Transnistria from Moldova, and how Russia was preparing the basis for other conflicts and wars near their borders. How to stop it? Right away, the Russian military and those who give war crimes in Ukraine, anyone who has given criminal orders and carried out them by killing our people, will be brought before the tribunal, which should be similar to the Nuremberg tribunals. I would like to remind Russian diplomats that a man like von Ribbentrop has not a punishment for crimes in World War II. I would also like to remind you that Adolf Eichmann also did not go unpunished. Nobody of them escaped the punishment. But the main thing is today is it's time to transform the system, the United Nations. So therefore, I was to convene a global conference, and we can do it here in peaceful Kyiv in order to determine how we are going to reform the world security system, how we will rely, how do we establish guarantee of recognition of borders and integrity of states and countries, how we will assert the rule of international law. It is now clear that the goals set in San Francisco in 1945 for the creation of a global security international organization have not been achieved, and it is impossible to achieve them without reforms. Therefore, we must do everything in our power to pass on to the next generation an effective UN with the ability to respond preventively to security challenges and thus guarantee peace, have the determination and ability to punish if the principles of peace are violated. There can be no more exceptions or privileges. Everybody must be equal. All participants of international relations, regardless of economic strength, geographical area, and individual ambitions. The power of peace must become dominant, the power of justice and the security power, as humanity has always dreamed of it. Ukraine is ready to provide a platform for one of the main offices of the newly updated security system, as similar to the Geneva office that deals with human rights, and Nairobi office that deals with environmental protection. And in Kyiv, we can have U24 office that can specialize in preventive measures to maintain peace. I would like to remind you of our peaceful mission in Afghanistan when we Ukrainians evacuated from that country more than 1,000 people from at our own expense. It was a very difficult phase, and Ukraine came to their help. We took in people of different nationalities, ethnic groups, different faith, Afghan citizens of the European countries, U.S., Canada. We did not look who needed help. Was it one of our own or somebody else? We helped all of them. We saved everyone. If every time there was a need, everyone in the world would be confident that help would come, the world would be definitely safer. Therefore, Ukraine has the moral right to propose a reform of the world security system. We have proven that we helped others not only happy time, but in dark times too. And now we need decisions from the Security Council for peace in Ukraine. If you do not know how to make this decision, you can do two things. Either remove Russia as an aggressor and a source of war, so it cannot block decisions about its own aggression, its own war, and then do everything that we can do to establish peace? Or the other option is please show how we can reform or change, dissolve yourself and work for peace. Or if there is no alternative and no option, then the next option would be dissolve yourself altogether. And I know that you can admit that if there is nothing that you can do besides conversation, we need peace. Ukraine needs peace, Europe needs peace, and the world needs peace. And finally, I would kindly ask you very much to watch this short video. Please give us 1 more minute of your time, the video that we want to show that one country can violate rights, and that's the result of being unpunished. If possible, please watch this video, because it is impossible to get everyone to come to our country and see it with your own eyes. Therefore, I would ask you to watch this video. Thank you very much.
现在泽连斯基邀请大家看现场直播，可能看那些录像啊，这个是可能是有点很难受的啊，这样特提醒各位观众。现在现场呢受到热烈欢迎，泽连斯基的演讲非常棒。从历史就说俄罗斯是一个，可能这个是关于杀戮的那个城镇啊，因为
Video is it just coming?
Video is coming。好，大家等一等，因为《纽约时报》已经通过卫星云图里面的图像证实了。
Uploaded to the technicians of Security Council, so they have it in their possession.
这是他们出现了技术上的，是不是有人在技术上捣鬼？
Propose that while we sort that out, I thank His Excellency Mr. Zelenskyy for his compelling and powerful remarks. We will come back to the video when we've sorted out the technical issues. May I express appreciation to the President for his leadership in wartime and for the extraordinary fortitude and bravery of the Ukrainian people under this unprovoked and illegal
现在你看的
invasion.
是现场直播转发啊，海外华人直播放弃一切的所谓的版权啊，这个视频我希望大家转发我们不为任何流量，只为转发。现在是由美国代表说话。
Let me also start by thanking UAE and Ambassador Zelenskyy for her successful presidency during the month of March. Madam President, as you begin your Security Council presidency, I want to thank the United Kingdom for your leadership and for organizing this vital discussion on Ukraine today. I also want to thank the Secretary General for his remarks and the other briefers. And I'd like to extend a warm welcome to President Zelenskyy. I was so moved by the address he made recently to our Congress, and we're truly honored by his presence here under the circumstances that he and Ukraine face today.
他把这个泽连斯基把
Madam President, tonight I returned from a trip
乌克兰
to
发生的
Moldova
事
and
情呢，
Romania.
给大家展示了全世界。
I saw with my own eyes the refugee crisis caused by Russia's
他
unconscionable
说
war.
这个代表
I spoke to
亲眼看到了
refugees who indicated to me their desires to
那
return
些难民
to their home.
的情况。
And we've all seen the images on TV of the bombed out buildings. But what we have not seen is that behind those destroyed buildings are destroyed lives and destroyed families.
我们看见了
I met with women and children who had fled
新
Ukraine,
闻报道里
who
面有那
stuck
些
their lives
损
into
毁的建筑
backpacks
物，但
and
是我
left
们
the
没有
only
看到
home
建
they
筑物
had
背
ever
后
known.
那些失去的生命。 和家
And
庭。
these were sobering conversations. One young woman I spoke to came with her 6-year-old brother who had autism and is struggling with cancer. Their single mother helped
这
them
里
escape
举
to
例了一
save their
个
lives.
有自闭
But
症
Russia's war has
和
interrupted the
有癌
care
症
her
患者的
brother
家庭
desperately needs. Another woman I
那种
spoke
困苦
to
的情况。
fled with her 8-year-old from Odessa. The father, who they'd left behind,
这里上提到
told
了
them there was
王吉
shelling
贤
right next to
在
their
的那个奥德
apartment
萨
that
发
very
生的
night.
情况。
And they very well could have died had they not left. A third woman I met told me that she used to love to
这人
travel,
讲他
but
见过的第
never
3个女人，
expected her next trip would be to flee her life, flee for her life.
怎么在逃
When
亡
I
过
asked
程
her
中的
where
经
she
历。
was from, she started to say, and then she stopped with tears in her eyes and said, "I'm sorry. I don't know how to say it, whether I live in Kyiv or whether I used to live in Kyiv." She was realizing in the moment just how dramatically her life had changed because of this senseless war. These are 3 stories of more than 10 million people, 6 million internally displaced, 4 million who have left Ukraine altogether, 4 million people who have relied on the big-heartedness of countries like Moldova, Romania, Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, and others across the region and the world to welcome and support all those leaving Ukraine in search of safety. Ukraine's neighbors are bearing the brunt of Europe's most significant refugee crisis since World War II. And I want these countries to know that they have a committed partner in the United States. And that is why the United States announced recently that we are prepared to provide more than $1 billion in new funding toward humanitarian assistance for those affected by Russia's war in Ukraine.
现在是美国驻联合国代表正在给
And
大
it
家
is
解
why
释。
we are welcoming up to 100,000 Ukrainians
美国
and
现在
others
又
fleeing Russia's aggression to the United
发了
States.
1亿美金
We will
来
continue to assist
资助
humanitarian efforts to help the
乌克
people
兰
of
的难民。
Ukraine and all those fleeing Putin's violence. But as heart-wrenching as the stories are that I heard in Moldova, has assessed that members of
现在
Russia's
是泽连斯
forces
基讲话以
have
后，
committed war
美国
crimes in Ukraine.
驻联合
And
国
even before
的
seeing
那
the
些大
images
使
from
正
Bucha,
在
President
演讲。
Zelenskyy, along with others in the region, were reporting that children were being abducted. And we heard him say that today. Also abducted are mayors and doctors, religious leaders, journalists, and all who dare defy Russia's aggression. Some of them, according to credible reports, including by the Mariupol City Council, have been taken to so-called filtration camps, where Russian forces are reportedly making tens of thousands of Ukrainian citizens relocate to Russia. Reports indicate that Russian federal security agents are confiscating passports and IDs, taking away cell phones, and separating families from one another. I do not need to spell out what these so-called filtration camps are reminiscent of. It's chilling, and we cannot look away. Every day, we see more and more how little Russia respects human rights. And that is why I announced yesterday that the United States, in coordination with Ukraine and many other UN member states, will seek Russia's suspension from the UN Human Rights Council. Given the growing mountain of evidence, Russia should not have a position of authority in a body whose very purpose is to promote respect for human rights. Not only is this the height of hypocrisy, it is dangerous. Russia is using its membership on the Human Rights Council as a platform for propaganda to suggest Russia has a legitimate concern for human rights. In fact, we will hear some of that propaganda here today, I know. And I will not dignify these lies with a response, only to say that every lie we hear from the Russian representative is more evidence that they do not belong on the Human Rights Council. 140 UN member states voted to condemn Russia over its unprovoked war and the humanitarian crisis it has unleashed upon the people of Ukraine. Here's my message to all of you. Now is the time to match those words with action and show the world that we can work responsibly. And I share President Zelensky's view that this moment requires responsible world powers and global leaders to show some backbone and stand up to Russia's dangerous and unprovoked threat against Ukraine and the world. The Secretary General said that confronting this threat is the Security Council's charge. It is, and it is also the responsibility of UN leaders and leaders around the world, every single member state with a voice in the GA. No one can be a shield for Russia's aggression. Suspending Russia from the Human Rights Council is something we collectively have the power to do in the General Assembly. Our votes can make a real difference. Russia's participation on the Human Rights Council hurts the Council's credibility. It undermines the entire UN, and it is just plain wrong. Let us come together to do what is right and do right by the Ukrainian people. Let us take this step to help them to start to rebuild their lives. And let us match the courage of President Zelenskyy, who we are so honored to have with us today. President Zelenskyy, I want you to know that we stand with the people of Ukraine as you face down this brutal attack on your sovereignty, on your democracy, and your freedom.
美国不愧为是人权上的一个领袖。
I thank the representative of the United States for her statement, and I give the floor to the representative of Albania.
Thank you, Madam President. Let me thank Ambassador Nusibe for having steered our work during the month of March and wish the UK and you,
现
Madam
在是
President, full
阿尔巴
success
尼
in
亚
our
的
common
代表
work during this
一个
month.
小国正在说话。
Albania welcomes President Zelensky's presence to this meeting. His remarks are painful, and his account on what Ukraine is experiencing under Russian occupation is revolting. We stand by you, Mr. President, by your compatriots, all Ukrainians, for their heroic resistance, for their resilience that the entire world is admiring. You are not alone. You have the world on your side, because it's the side of the right, of the just, and as we hope, of victory. Slava Ukraini. Madam President, let me thank SG Guterres for his, again, very clear and powerful remarks. I also thank USG DiCarlo and Griffiths for their updates. This is the
现在
14th
是在联
meeting
合
of the
国
Security
大会
Council
上，
on Ukraine since
阿尔
the
巴尼亚
31st
的
of
联合国代表
January,
在
while
支
the
持
war
泽
of
连斯基。
aggression has entered the second month. Let's establish a few basic yet meaningful facts. Russia has stalled and its imperial dreams are nowhere. Taking Ukraine finally proved impossible. Kiev was too hard to swallow. Russian army is in disarray, but it has not stopped shelling and bombardments. But all this is not new, and all this is not news. The real news that has horrified the world is what Russia is leaving behind. The unspeakable horrors, those soul-crushing images in areas from which Russia is withdrawing. Images of civilians executed with a bullet in the neck, sometimes with their hands tied behind their backs or shot dead in their bicycles. Images of mass graves overflowing with corpses. Images of carnage and devastation, including looted homes, rape, and sexual violence, acts usually attributed only to thugs. They spring from the same cruel impulses as the bombardment of cities, homes, hospitals, schools, and kindergartens by the Russian forces. Bucha is an open-air graveyard, the notorious facelift of the Russian aggression. Madam President, we have heard time and again,
这个城市已经变成了一个开放的公墓了，
yes, but no.
到处都是尸体。
It will be hard, actually impossible, to convince anyone that the destroyed
说得太
tanks
好了。
that clutter the roads, the mines and booby traps left behind amid the wreckage, and the bodies of civilians killed by arbitrary executions and laying in the streets amidst debris are staged scenes for propaganda. Who would believe that Russia aggressed Ukraine simply to protect civilians, while Ukraine is busy staging horror movies? You may muzzle media back home, but you cannot fool satellite images. You cannot blind independent reporters and human rights NGOs on the ground. Waiting for Russia to accept and tell the truth is waiting for Godot to arrive, and he never does. These are facts, hard and sickening proof of the atrocities committed, the ugly face of this madness. Such crimes, as documented by Human Rights Watch and verified by independent and respected professional reporters, those who are bound for the Russians call for answers, call for thorough investigation, for effective accountability, for justice. Prime Minister Rama called these crimes a terrible pain and a horrible shame. Russia has an international obligation to abide by international humanitarian law, the laws of war, including the Geneva Conventions of 1949 and its first additional protocol. Russia has an obligation to abide by the order of ICJ to immediately halt its military activity in Ukraine. But unfortunately, Russia has made another choice, not to respect any of it, and has cancelled itself from international law. But the law will pursue it. Russian army and its commanders cannot escape accountability. The name of the butcher of Mariupol, a criminal that has reduced an entire city to ashes and has made its citizens go from 3 meals a day to barely 3 meals a week, is engraved in the ruins of the city. This is why we will support the call to suspend Russia's participation in the Human Rights Council. The UNGA resolution that created the Council stipulates that, and I quote, members of the Council will respect the highest standards in the promotion and protection of human rights. As we see, Russia's standards are nose-eating, and its presence there is a farce, a desecration of the place that is called to be the sanctuary of rights. Dear colleagues, Russia has announced that it will now shift its focus on eastern Ukraine. This means that it will concentrate its brutality there in what may end up becoming a war of attrition. Russia has blocked the renewal of the OSCE
你现在看到的我们是实况，从联合国总部现在的一个实况 live 现场直播。现在是阿尔巴尼亚的联合国代表正在发言。
This war continues to particularly affect women and children. Millions have been displaced, many of them alone, in search of safety and
这
security.
个俄罗斯
It is
发动了
heartbreaking
战
to see
争，
mothers
对
write names and addresses
母亲
in
和
the
儿
back
童
of their children, so that they are recognized in case they end up being orphans.
造成的
We
痛苦最
welcome
大。
the efforts of OCHA and its partners to deliver assistance in support of the people in Ukraine and the millions of refugees in neighboring countries. Madam President, let me end with this note. Rarely has the outcome of a war been so disastrously the complete opposite of what it wanted to achieve. Russia's army has been defeated by the outgunned and outnumbered Ukrainian resistance. Russia is isolated like never in its history. It has become the world's most sanctioned country in history. No country has ever seen itself transform in a matter of only 10 days from a global player into a financial and international pariah, to the point that it is obliged to find comfort in the support from North Korea and Syria. Dear colleagues, This aggression and its startling defeat have once and for all separated the fates of Ukrainians and Russians. Because the case of Ukraine is also the cause of democracy against tyranny and kleptocracy. It is a fight between the will of the people against the vicious will of one, whose reckless actions have challenged everything we stand for, and who is directly responsible for the economic disruption and food insecurity which is affecting the entire world. He may choose to stop, withdraw troops, and quit Ukraine, or continue to descend in the very abyss he has created and face the consequences. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Albania for his statement. I understand that we now have solved the technical problems, so I suggest we return to the video. Thank you.
好，现在呢是大会主席呢邀请大家看1分钟，这是乌克兰的视频，可以看到非常惨烈。路上的，从背部开枪，不同的城市，全家人打死。这是俄罗斯犯下的滔天罪行，我们不能再麻木不仁。不能在现在的社会对待这些真相看不见，太惨了。战争。
I would like to thank the delegation of Ukraine for sharing that video with us.
很短，但是这些现成太大的冲击。此时此刻，我的泪水已经冲出来了，很难控制。想不到这个到今天还发生这样的事情，惨绝人寰的事。
I would like to, at the outset, express my appreciation to the Ambassador of the United Arab Emirates for her remarkable presidency. I thank the Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres,
这是加蓬的
Under Secretary General Madam Rosemary DiCarlo, as well as Mr. Martin Griffiths for their respective briefings. I welcome the participation in this meeting of President
我们暂停一
Zelenskyy.
下。看到这地方呢，后面是联合国代表将是依次发言。这让我给大家做个小结，就是泽连斯基今天在联合国的发言是非常精彩。他从乌克兰在2月24号那个被俄罗斯侵略以后，这个事件呢，乌克兰发生了这个变化，特别提醒大家一定要回头看联合国宪章的第1章第1节，提醒呢大家，然后提醒了俄罗斯不仅是今天的行为，然后也提醒了俄罗斯在历史上的行为，比如说这种杀戮的行为，还提醒联合国，如果对这种反人类罪这种大屠杀不进行制止，那么过去没有制止，比如说在刚果还有很多地方发生的话，那今天呢， 才导致了这个乌克兰发生这种情况。泽连斯基他也给联合国提出建议2个建议，要么就是把这个正在犯这个违反人权的俄罗斯，把这个战争的这个犯罪分子的根源给他除掉，要么呢就给乌克兰人民具体得到这个和平有什么措施要明确出来。非常这个演讲呢非常感人他说俄罗斯这种殖民的历史不是现在才有，可能在历史上他也做过，包括他今天把俄罗斯把乌克兰的人迁移到俄罗斯来，作为像一个奴隶一样的把他带到他们的国家总而言之现在呢世界真的到了一个选择的时候。美国呢在这个美国的代表在演讲中也告诉一条新闻，那就是俄罗斯呢，对不起太感人了，俄罗斯在联合国人权会以及被全世界绝大部分的国家差不多160几个国家吧，刚刚没听清楚大概是一个非常大的一个国家，差不多是全部了，很多国家把它 suspend， 也就是把它这个资格取消，因为它是在违反践踏人权的同时呢，还在利用这个讲人权的地方来继续做宣传误导人的宣传，所以把他的这个资格给停去了。我们的直播因为时间有限跟大家在连线讲，当我们听到这个泽连斯基还有全世界用卫星云图卫星定位很多图像展示的现场的这些东西，让世人呢把俄罗斯继续说谎的这种东西呢忍无可忍了。因为在他入侵前有照片，俄罗斯入侵以后在路边以及这种陆陆续续出现的这种人丝带这种情形展示给全世界。俄罗斯代表还继续在撒谎，所以我们作为有良知的人，作为这个现代文明有良知的人，已经无法容忍这种杀戮。现在呢，联合国以及国际军事法庭都要对这种战犯进行审判。泽连斯基他也特别提到，他说要对发起这场战争以及给这个杀戮下命令的人进行起诉，国际上的起诉，让联合国制裁这么一个人。言下之意那就是对这场战争负责的战犯，也就是普京要负责。这个国际审判肯定会进行。这地方我们要提醒那些支持俄罗斯从事这场战争，或者是装的这个杀戮看不见的人，要特别当心。如果你还在这样装糊涂的话，不是装糊涂，而是本身就是坏。好了，这里是海外华人直播，我们始终不办高深，我们力求直播传真。我们对这个视频没有任何版权要求，我们希望大家能够转发就转发，如果你愿意点赞 你就点赞。如果你在这边留言继续说像这样的现场直播还是一个假的，那么你不是没有良心，而是你就是坏。好了，各位观众，你的支持，你的点赞，就是我们继续前行的动力。面对的这种人类历史41天，我们可以看到普京赤裸裸的侵略，看到一个主权国家被侵略，也看到俄罗斯这个所谓的复旧，还想回到他当年那个帝国的那种情形，我们就会看到这个所谓的俄罗斯帝国就在我们眼前倒塌。历史呢，正在上演一场大戏。我们不是一个看戏的旁观者，我们必须要做出一个历史的选择，我们要有一个责任感，传播真相。看这个视频，传播真相就是你的责任。我们继续看看联合国他们在干什么啊？我们这个是这个，如果大家可以看的话，就到联合国此时此刻啊，联合国这个视频去看。现在都是一个 live stream 啊，还有一个Uber 这个雅虎的雅虎的 finance 上面也有。所以给大家呢，如果是觉得想看到真正的视频啊，现在正在进行的，现在是一个 live 的啊，那就直接到油管上 YouTube 到 YouTube 上再找到联合国这个 United Nation 这地方去看。好了，各位观众，感谢你今天的收听收看，再见，拜拜。